Hello, and welcome to my Swole Kitchen, the show where I teach you how to eat to grow muscle. I'm Colin Harding, and for today's episode, we are going to be making beef squares, for which we will need ground beef, and your seasoning of choice. I'm using salt and pepper. I know, it's very complex, I know. So let's get started. So to make beef squares, we need some beef. I'm using 93% lean, 7% fat ground beef. I got this from Harris Teeter. It's pretty cheap. And the low amount of fat in it makes it easy to, not go overboard on your fat macros if you're trying to diet for muscle gain and fat loss. And I'm also using some salt. I like to use coarse kosher salt. Makes it pretty easy to not oversalt your beef when you use the coarse stuff versus the fine stuff. And you really don't have to be too careful with the application of the salt in this recipe, which is pretty cool. You don't want to go overboard. Salt to taste, basically. But with sea salt, like kosher salt versus table salt, it's a lot harder to go overboard on the salt. And it's actually good for you. As long as you're drinking enough water every day, you want a good amount of sea salt in your diet. It helps with cell transport, nutrients across the cell membranes of your body's cells. And then, of course, black pepper. I've got this fancy pepper grinder, and the peppercorns I'm using are these ones, Morton and Bassett from San Francisco, because it has all these nice things on it, like gluten-free and non-GMO, because that matters when it comes to peppercorns. So yeah, and then we need a couple of vessels to put the beef in. Of course, I'm using these aluminum foil ones because I'm lazy and I don't have to clean them when I'm done. So the next step will be to get the beef out of the container and shape it. I like to shape the beef, mess it with my hands so that it doesn't get crumbly when you cook it. And if you don't shape it, it'll fall apart after you cook it, and I don't like crumbly beef. So let's switch to the overhead shot here, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Alright, so I'm going to get this beef out of the container here. And of course, wash your hands before you start messing with your ground meat. Of course, I washed my hands. It was just off camera, so you didn't see. They're very clean. I'm going to take my beef out and just start to shape it in my hands a little bit. Just sort of squish it together and between my fingers just a little bit into a shape of a ball. All these little individual strands of beef basically come out of the extruder when it's ground, and they remain mostly separate. By working it together like this, you're allowing the protein, the fat, and the meat to clump, basically. That's a good word, right? To clump together into one mass, which then, once it's cooked, will not crumble apart. And I find that tastes better to me. If you like crumbly beef, hey, more power to you. So I get this sort of shaped the way I like it, into a ball. Shaping it into a ball sort of makes it easier for the next step, which is pressing it into the vessel that you're cooking it in, because you want to make sure that you do that evenly. So if it's a nice even round shape like this, that next step's even easier. So do that one more time, and then we'll move on to seasoning. Ground beef is probably the best thing you can eat to grow. I would eat it all the time if I could. It's just for me, I carry more fat than most people, so I have to kind of watch it. Even though this is 93.7 ground beef, about as lean as you can get. I just have to control a little bit more than some other people my fat intake, so that I can continue to gain muscle and lose fat rather than gain muscle and gain fat. I'm sort of recomposing my body right now, doing a slow recomp, trying to change so that I have more muscle and less fat, but it's slow going. But it means hard work in the gym, and it means sticking to a diet like this without fail. So that's why meal prep like this is so important. You save a lot of money doing meal prep like this, and you get really great results in the gym. So the next step, as you might imagine, is to put your beef into your baking vessels. And something else I should have mentioned earlier that I forgot to, probably the first thing you should do is preheat your oven. I preheat it to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and usually by the time I finish this prep work, the oven's preheated. So that's simple enough. So you got your beef in the vessels, you've shaped it, so it should be pretty easy now to just press it down into the vessels. My vessels are a square shape, and I think they're 9 by 9 inches. The idea is to have the beef about an even thickness all the way around so that it cooks evenly. Because that's how that works. And just keep pushing and try to feel it out. Doesn't have to be perfect, but get it in there just so. All right, I'll do the other one here. I'm pushing it down with the back of my hands, using my fingertips a little bit. Get it in. You fit that meat in however you can. All right. And I'm going to do a quick hand wash. Now that I got the beef in, I'm not going to be handling the raw meat anymore. It's a good time to wash your hands. You will get some fat on your hands when you're handling raw meat, especially meat with a higher fat content like beef. And so a good way to get your hands clean, better than just hand soap, is a little bit of dishwashing detergent, or is that what they call it? Dishwashing hand soap? It's a non-polar solvent. It'll help get that fat off of your fingers more easily than just plain hand soap. Another trick with this beef, if you can remember to set it out for an hour or so before you get started, let it come down closer to room temp. It'll cook more quickly and be a little bit easier to work with. Don't leave it out so long that it's going to be gross and you might get sick, but use common sense. So I'm going to wash my hands real quick with a little bit of dish soap. All right, clean hands. And now it is time to season. Again, I'm using coarse kosher salt, which is, kosher salt is sea salt. I Googled it. Sea salt is definitely the way you want to go. Don't use table salt. It's not good for you. That stuff will raise your blood pressure. And sea salt is good for you, so incorporate it into your diet. So we're gonna go ahead and go some sea salt, a decent amount, all the way over the beef. Sea salt, good for you on both squares here. I'm using, it was about 2¼ pounds of ground beef in each one of these tins. And my hope is that after it cooks, and I divide it into quarters, and each one of those quarters will be a meal for me, that there'll be about ½ pound of cooked beef, which is what I eat for one meal of beef. Of course, weigh your food after it's been cooked. Weigh it so you can be sure. And maybe you need to start with a little bit more beef than 2¼ maybe you need like 2½ in order to reach that point, because a fair amount of it will cook down and render off as fat. Now I'll get some ground pepper on these bad boys. And you can season it with whatever you want, really. I would recommend, maybe not too many spicy things if you have a problem with that. The name of the game with this stuff is we're trying to cook food that will provide a good amount of protein and really complete amino acid profiles, so that your body can really make good use of what you're putting in it to build muscle. But that it also must digest well and digest easily and digest as completely as possible. So sometimes some things that you add flavor-wise to your food can actually screw up your digestion a little bit, which is not ideal if what you're trying to do is use this food as basically fuel to build muscle. So my oven hasn't quite come up to temperature yet because I forgot to set it, but it should be about 350 at this point. There it is. Look at that. Just beeped. So there we are. Oven's at 350. I'm going to use my trusty timer here to set this for 38 minutes. I've found in my oven to get these to medium rare the way I like it, 38 minutes is the good amount of time to put them in for. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'll take this camera off. Hello again. And we'll go ahead and put these bad boys in the oven. All right. There you go. There's one. And there's two. All right, guys, good luck. And I will see you in 38 minutes. All right, it's 38 minutes. My timer's just gone off, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this beef out, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. Safety first. Here we go. Get a good shot at this beef for you. Here we go. It's what the beef looks like when it's cooked for 38 minutes. It's medium rare on the inside. You're gonna have to take my word for it. I'm not gonna cut open the beef until it cools down. Otherwise, all the juice will run out and it'll be dry. But I cut each of these squares into 4 pieces. Each piece should be around ½ pound, and that means this is beef for me for 8 days. Because I eat one of those squares as one of my 6 meals in a day every day. So, I mean, you guys saw how long it took to get this set up. It's really easy. Just shape the beef, press it into the pan, salt, pepper, stick it in the oven. And then, do whatever you want for the next 38 minutes. I was saving the earth from Aliens on the PlayStation for 38 minutes. My timer went off. I come over, take the beef out, and put it in a Tupperware like this one here. I fit both of these in this Tupperware. Take it to work, stick it in the fridge, and just pull out a square of beef for my first meal, or my second meal of the day, rather. And that's it. So, if you guys like this video, and you want to see more recipes like this, go ahead and hit the like button and click on the subscribe button as well. I'll have more simple and effective recipes for meal prep, for bodybuilding, and for growing muscle, growing lean muscle. And all of my stuff's going to be super easy because I'm very lazy. And that's my guarantee to you. So yeah, thanks again for watching My Swole Kitchen. I'm Colin Harding, and as always, stay swole.